Hello, I am Acharya DharmAnanda, and in this talk I've been asked to explain to you a little bit about a chant that I do or have done at the beginning of the two previous videos I've already recorded for the Mahajriya YouTube channel, and I'll be using this chant at the beginning of other Dhamma talks that I give for the YouTube channel as well. The chant is Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Now this chant is in the language of Pali. That's because at the time of the Buddha, the spoken language was Pali, and that's the language that the Buddha spoke. It originally derived from Sanskrit, but Sanskrit was primarily used for the Brahmanical caste, the priests, during the time of the Buddha. And the Buddha was of the Katiya caste, which was a noble warrior caste. So he, more than likely, historically speaking, probably didn't know very much Sanskrit if he knew any at all. Which is why Pali was primarily used. Then later on, of course, his teachings got translated from the Pali into the Sanskrit and so forth. That's why there are some teachings of the Buddha that are in Sanskrit. With this chant, I'll break it down for you. Okay, so we've got Namo Tassa. This means I pay homage to. That's very straightforward. Then we have Namo Tassa, then we have Bhagavato. Now, Bhagavato, that means the Blessed One. It comes from a root term, Bhagava, and if you listen to any teachings or Dhamma talks of monks, primarily of Buddhist monks, they sometimes might call the Buddha Bhagava. That means Blessed One. And if you've read, of course, read any of the suttas or sutras, the ones that are in Mahajriya or from other traditions, you'll read at the very beginning of each one, and it'll say, "Thus I have heard the Blessed One was doing this, doing that, whatever." They're talking about where he was, where the Buddha was, what the Buddha was doing right before and during his giving of the talk. And so that's actually where it would be at, the Blessed One, Bhagava. And they call the Buddha the Blessed One because of his status within the Sangha of being the founder and the great teacher. Now then after Bhagava, we have Arahato, or Arahat. This literally means, translated in English, the exalted one. Arahat was the original, that's the root, it means exalted one. That was actually the original name given to people who had attained full and complete enlightenment or accomplishment under the teachings of the Buddha. And I'll tell you the difference between the Buddha and Arahats in a minute. But yeah, this was the original path, the original culmination. This was it for the Buddha and his students' Arahatship. They had gone as far as they could go, physically incarnated. It was death after that, basically, where they went any farther, and that was what is known as Parinibbana or Parinirvana. That's talked about in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra that you probably know about through Mahajriya. Now, after that, we have Samma Sambuddhassa. So we have Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Samma means fully. Sambuddhassa means enlightened one or awakened one, because enlightenment and awakening, they're basically the same thing. Just some people call it enlightenment, some people call it awakening. And the reason for that is because with the term enlightenment, if I tell you something you don't know, I've enlightened you. Like with this talk here, I'm explaining this chant to you. If you didn't know what this chant meant before, but you know now, after listening to what I'm talking about, I've enlightened you. But people can only really awaken themselves. You get up in the morning after night's sleep, you stumble around, turn on the lights. You're the only person who can really fully wake yourself back up after a night's sleep. So you're really the only person who can awaken yourself. And through the Buddhist teachings, that's what you do. You learn the meditation practice, and the teachings of the Buddha are a guide. But it's the meditation practice and what you discover about your own attachments and how to release your own attachments through the hindrances that come up through meditation that you end up teaching yourself how to attain enlightenment and release your own attachments and attain that full awakening, the liberation. So that's why some people call it enlightenment, some people call it awakening. But Sammasambuddhasa, the Buddha is the fully enlightened one. And the reason for this, and this is why I was going to explain it to you in a minute, the difference between an arahat, a fully enlightened being, and a Buddha, a fully awakened one, such as the historical Sakyamuni Buddha, the difference is that a Buddha comes around during a time in which the teachings of the path to enlightenment are no longer existent. They have been lost to the sands of time. They've been forgotten by people. People might still know about the process of awakening or enlightenment, but they don't know how to get there. They don't know the path. They're looking for the path to enlightenment or awakening. And a Buddha comes along who, through his own efforts, his or her own efforts, because a Buddha can be female, his or her own efforts through the meditation practice, that one actually learns about the path to enlightenment, and actually rediscovers the path, and then attains full and complete enlightenment, and then awakens the rest of the, teaches this and begins helping to awaken the rest of the world, teaching them how to awaken themselves. So that's the difference between an actual historical Buddha, such as Sakyamuni Buddha, and an arahat, someone who is fully enlightened, that within Mahajri you would consider a Buddha yourself. Because people who are fully enlightened arahats are actually Buddhas too. They're known as Pratyeka Buddhas, which are kind of, for lack of a better term, because they are a bit of a lower class of Buddha, and that's only for lack of a better term because they aren't necessarily lower than the Buddha. It's just that the only difference is they didn't rediscover through their own efforts the way to enlightenment. It was rediscovered it was already rediscovered beforehand, and they figured it out after the wheel had been turning. Because with what the Buddha does once rediscovering this, it's basically what you might consider an energetic shock wave throughout time and space, that for a certain amount of time, which is known as a dispensation of the Buddha, has the energy of that of the doorway to finding this path is open. Before that and after that dispensation passes, that door is then energetically closed, and until another Buddha comes and rediscovers it again, the door won't be open, so nobody can find it. So like I eventually kind of figured this out for myself a little bit, about finding this way to enlightenment during my first enlightenment experience or awakening experience, and didn't know what happened afterwards. And then I went and figured out what was going on, and that led me to Buddhism. But you know, the doorway was already open because the dispensation of the current historical Buddha, Sakyamuni Buddha, is currently going on, and he prophesied that his dispensation will last for about roughly 5,000 years, give or take. No exact amount of time, but roughly that amount of time. So we're a little over halfway through it, so that dispensation continues going. Once it ends, then there will be a certain amount of time where it's forgotten, and then later on another Buddha will come forth, and he actually did prophesy who the next Buddha would be, and that's Maitreya Buddha, who we know about. It was one of the few Buddhas that the Buddha himself actually spoke about by name, coming after him, or really talked about to begin with. I think there were very few Buddhas. There were only Buddhas within like 3 or 4 Buddhas before him that he actually talked about, out of the countless numbers that there have probably been. And Maitreya was the only one he talked about coming after him. So that's the difference between an arahat and a Buddha. And that's why we pay homage to the Buddha about rediscovering these teachings to bring to us. So, Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Now, this is primarily, as I said, just a chant to pay homage and thanks to the Buddha, to give thanks to the Buddha for his teachings. It's used in 2 different ways. First, it can be used in one way right before reciting the precepts and refuges as part of a daily or semi-regular chanting practice. A lot of lay Buddhist practitioners use this. Monks use that during their daily chanting. I personally haven't found it beneficial for me because it's a bit redundant, because the precepts of the refuges, especially the refuges themselves, the first one is I pay refuge to the Buddha, or I go to refuge to the Buddha. So paying homage to the Buddha, and then of course going to refuge to the Buddha, which is another way of paying homage to the Buddha, seems a bit redundant for me, so I choose not to do it. But it's up to the individual who chooses. The second way is the way that I use it. Monks, other Buddhist priests, teachers, they'll say it right before giving a talk. And that's the only way that I kind of prefer to use it, because I'm not really, while technically I'm paying homage to the Buddha through giving the teaching, I'm not openly giving homage to the Buddha throughout, saying, I pay homage to the Buddha for this, or I pay homage to the Buddha for that. So I use it before the teaching to pay homage to the Buddha, give thanks to the Buddha for the teaching that he rediscovered that I'm teaching back to others, and typically in my own words. So it's mainly used as that type of chant. It's not technically meant as a mantra. You can choose to use it as one. If you choose to use it as one, I would probably think of this as a way of giving divine gratitude, of having divine gratitude. So you can think of it as a mantra of divine gratitude if you choose. And just keep in a mind of gratitude while doing it, an attitude, what I call an attitude of gratitude while doing the mantra. If you choose to do it as such and charge it, even though it's not really designed for that purpose, but you can try it if you'd like to. Do the typical 9x12 approach of 9 full malas per day for 12 days, or 1 mala per day for 108 days, however you choose to do it. And while you're doing it, just keep in that attitude of gratitude throughout doing the mantra practice. And also try to, if for some reason you have a thought that comes up in your mind that distracts you from the mantra and you have to come back to it, whenever you stop, before you come back to doing the mantra, I definitely recommend doing what is known as the 6 R's. I taught this in both the 4 Noble Truths video as well as the 3 trainings video, and I'll probably teach it again multiple other times. But the 6 R's, this is the way the Buddha taught for his meditation technique. And it's a good thing to especially keep in mind with this, because this is a part of the technique that the Buddha used to rediscover the path to enlightenment. And this is what actually separates the meditation practice taught by people who were looking for the path but couldn't find it. This is the main difference between that and then the Buddha's meditation practice that helped him find the path. So this is how you reach the path or use the path and walk it to get to the end point. And the 6 R's are like once your mind has been pulled away from the mantra you're doing, you recognize that it's been pulled away. That's the first R. You release the thought that pulled you away from your mantra. That's the second R. You re-smile, because while you're doing this you should try to smile if you can, because this is gratitude. You're being happy and grateful, and that's an outward expression of happiness and gratitude. Of course, you might not be able to, but so if you aren't necessarily doing it while you're saying the mantra, smile after you release that thought. It helps to release tension in your mind. And that's actually what happens whenever you have a distracting thought come up in your mind. It causes tension in your mind. So you re-smile, and that helps to release some of the tension in your mind. After you re-smile, you relax your mind and your body. This helps to further release the tension that is in your mind, because this random thought that came into your head that pulled you away from your mantra, that's craving, that's attachment. And so attachment manifests as tension and tightness in the body. And so you release that tension and tightness in the body before coming back to your mantra, which is the next part. The 5th R, that is return to your object of meditation, which is at the time your mantra. This is the mantra you're doing with your mala. So you relax the tension and tightness in your mind and body, and that keeps the craving and attachment from returning to you whenever you come back to your mantra. So you return to your mantra. And then the 6th R is you repeat the process as necessary. If it happens again during the time that you're meditating, doing the mantra practice, it shouldn't probably take you more than, if you're really good at chanting and you get used to it, probably takes you about 20-25 minutes maybe to do 9 full malas of this. At the slowest, it probably takes you about 35 to 40 minutes maybe. So during this time, it might happen again that your mind gets distracted from the mantra. But if it does, then continue repeating this process as necessary. So yeah, that's 6 R's. After your thought gets pulled away, recognize the thought, release the thought, re-smile, or just smile if you weren't smiling beforehand. Relax mind and body, because that's how the attachment manifests as tension, tightness in mind and body. Return to your mantra. That's the 5th R. That's 5. And then repeat the process as necessary. That's 6. So that's another way of helping to keep in mind this and to help use it to further along your progress. And now, so I'll give an initiation experience here for this. So if in case you want to charge it as a mantra, I will say the chant or sing the chant 9 times, and then that will be the end of the talk. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. 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 Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa.